Once again with the Maya Microflight, continuing with my historical work related to the micro sub-micro palm-sized helicopters that came out that basically boomed in the early 2000s, what I call the micro heli revolution years. So what I'm going to show you in this video, this is going to be video number 3, is a compilation of frames and basically pad and boom contraptions that I did in the work related to the Robin 280 helicopter that I produced and sold back in 1999, 2000. Now, prior to that, I had done a lot more work with a lot more frames and more craziness. Prior to getting to the level that I'm going to show you here of these helicopters. And once again, this is an evolution, if you will, an artistic evolution of the work that I've done, with respect to micro helicopters. If you didn't know how I came about doing those, so now you're going to find out how, not as you're finding out, through these videos, how I approach, this line of work, this artistic form of our beautiful radio control hobby. I have a soft spot for radio control models. I don't know, maybe it has to do psychologically with the fact that my dad, back in the I would say early 60s, had this little boat that I don't know where he got it from, but it's a little yacht that was operated by a Radiovac battery. For those of you who are old enough to remember the name Radiovac or something like that. I think it was the Radiovac, like a Ray battery. It was I think it was maybe a 9-volt battery, really chunky battery. And he had this yacht. There was maybe a 16-inch little model radio, not radio control. In those days, I don't think radio control was that popular, or that you don't see. You basically saw just battery operated toys, and they were chunky, they were big and bulky, like I said. So he had this yacht that would be operated just by putting the steering mechanism, to one side, left or right, and then it would go around in circles. You just turn it full on and until the battery wore out. So my dad used to take this little boat to a pond where we lived nearby, and he used to run it. He used to run it in that pond, or that it was like a man-made lake. And we used to rent a canoe, and my mom would not go on the canoe because she was afraid of the water, or they would tip over and she didn't know how to swim. My dad, on the other hand, he was he was in the Navy. He was an excellent swimmer, and I acquired some of those traits from my dad. As far as his love for water and basically the hobby electronics. My dad was also a wizard at doing things, fixing things that other people could not fix. So I'm not trying to, once again, to say this from an ego standpoint. I'm just saying what is real, what is truth. And sometimes we acquire, those gifts from our parents, and I was fortunate to acquire many gifts from both my dad and my mom's side. But as far as my dad is concerned, that, going back to the psychological effect that it has on you as you grow up, as you tend to really want to do what you want to do, what is truly in your spirit, it has a base early on in your early years. So to any parent out there that is bringing up a family, bringing up a kid, be a decent parent is my recommendation to you. I have a beautiful family. I was fortunate to have 3 kids, and every kid is on their own. I stumble on a video. Let me share this with my audience also, because as I'm doing these sort of fun stuff, videos, historical of this junk that I have accumulated over the years. I like to share some personal things that are important, for the soul, for the spirit of people. What was I going to say? When I stumbled on a video one day, not very long ago, that made me think, and it said, when your kids don't call you or they don't seem to rely on you anymore, be glad, because you have done a great job at parenting. They're on their own. They no longer need you. They don't take that as a sign that they don't care about you, but take it as a sign that they're on their own. That you have done your job. Wow, it really made me think about that. And I go, yeah, you know what? I think there's some level of truth in there. My kids are great. I love my kids. I'm pretty sure they love me too. Even though we don't say it too often. We're not that gaudy or that mushy, but we are mushy in the sense that we hug, and it's important to hug your kids. I don't care how old my kids are; they're still my kids, my babies. Um, and that's important in a family to establish those early roots with your kids early on. And so my dad, I guess he established that with me at that point in time that I remember vividly. If it was yesterday, sitting in this canoe, and I have photographs of those years also to prove it. Sitting with my dad and with my mom, I guess she took the picture. She had a photographer because back in those days where I lived, we had photographers that would come by and they would take pictures of you. We would pay the photographer, and you had your photo. Um, but my dad also had a nice camera back in those years that because he was into all that stuff. Very much. You're looking at a character very similar to my dad. My dad was in many ways like myself, and I have to. I have to recognize that. Although we as humans sometimes have flaws and we're not perfect. We have to rely or depend on the things that are positive, because only then we can promote a more positive world in this world, that we crazy world that we live in. So it's important to build that character early on with your family, with your kids, and that got built into me. When I was very young. With my dad, I remember that little boat, and so psychologically, I think that had an effect. That as I was getting to the point where I wanted to do my own thing, my spirit was truly coming out. Because when you're young and you're going to school, you just don't know where to go. You need direction. That's why we have counselors in high schools, to guide you into what is it that you want to do. You want to, uh, do you want to go in the route of a career, a college career? Do you want to join the services? Many of my friends joined the services. Many of them are gone, unfortunately, through natural causes or through service that they've done, overseas. And a few of them are still around yet that are, that went to college, studied to be engineers, um, lawyers, architects. So when you have a mix of people that you engage with, you begin to understand the world a little bit better. Because imagine if we were just one thing and one thing only. If that color white did not come in other colors, it would be boring. It would be a very boring world. And I'm not trying to demean anybody's ethnicity by saying this. uh, you just have to be how can I say this? There's good and bad in everything. You can take this color as good or bad. You can take this color right here, which is totally dark and black, as good or bad. It just depends how you approach things, and how you mold those things into a particular um, something of value, into a particular form. And so it is how you form those things. And once again, I go back to the early stages of childhood. That is very important. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor, but I understand a lot of those things from a logical, common sense standpoint. And that's all you need to do is be logical, common sense, and hopefully you have some sense of discernment, to understand what is right, what is wrong, what how we can do things much better to enhance the world, not to stifle the world, not to go back to Stone Age times. So, having said that, a lot of this work is partially because of my dad, but also a good portion partially because of my mom, because my mom was also very creative in many respects. And I used to watch my mom. She had a master's in in fashion design and confection. Confection means manufacturing clothing. And she worked for some interesting customers that would keep our business alive. When I smile like that, I say interesting customers. I don't mean it in a shady way because we're not shady people. Uh, we are, we have to rely on our work, and if our work, like take for instance myself, um, I have never had a customer that came to me and said, design this for me for a nefarious reason. Never, never. And even if I would have had what I would have declined it right away, because that's not in my spirit. It's not who I am. You shouldn't do things like that, for the sake of profits, for the sake of keeping yourself, up in pedestals, and above others. You should not have to do that. And so my work, what you see here may to some people be a very, very naive, perhaps very, very, very humble things that I've done throughout the years. But this is who I am. I cannot hide, like I said, who I have been, and in the steps that I have taken to become, to the point that I have become is a small company entity, surviving in the midst of all these other big corporations that are driven by high profits. So with that having said, out of the way, I'm a little more at ease, catching my breath here. Let me go through some of these for those who are interested in this kind of stuff. If you're not great, you're free to leave, and just don't be mean. Don't leave me a negative comment. I don't get negative comments, but I do get sometimes negative thumbs down, and I know who you are. If you're giving me a thumbs down, I just sort of have an idea who you are, the kind of individual you are. So, uh, if this hits a nerve with you in a positive way, give me a thumbs up. If it doesn't, please don't even mention it. Just leave and go on your merry way. Go live your life, and others live in peace. Uh, this is a compilation of the work that I did once again for the Robin 280 micro helicopter. And as I'm going to go through this, a lot of the stuff is, I started with the Robin 280. Is the two-legged helicopter, the Robin 280 helicopter that I have shown in some photographs early on through a lot of the forums that I used to participate in back in when AOL just came online. We're talking about early 90s. So I had a two-legged helicopter. So the two-legged helicopter is nothing new. If you see a two-legged modern-day helicopter, with flying with all the technology that we have these days, it's nothing new. The two-legged was already done many and before me, even before my time, by other entities that we're probably thinking along the same lines. So, none of this stuff is new in terms of inspiration. So we get inspired by a lot of things. And this may inspire some other people in the future, some younger generations that may want to take technology into another level. Although I really feel, and I honestly say this, that technology, it is at its max. How much further can we go with technology other than what's already out there? If you look at AI, for example, it's scary stuff. But if you learn to recognize that, you know what to avoid and how to avoid those things. But it is at a point where I think we've maxed out. We have helicopters that fly themselves that look in scale exactly like the real thing. I talked about the RC era helicopters in my other videos, how close they are to perfection, and even with the flight controllers that allow you to basically fly hands free. So how much more can we go? From there, I think we've reached that limit, and I believe that's one of the reasons why some people are wanting to go back in time. It's kind of silly to wanting to go back in time to old times, make things great again, as if they were not already great at that time. Let it go. These things were great for the time, but I'm not trying to go back to these times by doing these videos. Let me be clear about that. I'm just showing you what I did, and what the evolution of things. That's more for a historical point of reference. I'm not trying to go back to things and whitewash some of the more prominent things in between, in the interim of how it started and where it is right now. That's historic reference. From point A to point B. But to go back to that and say, we need to go back to this, it's kind of silly. And I hope you're with that mind frame as well, because let's be honest. Do you want your future generations to to be in a world that has basically hindered mankind in a sense, or do you want your kids, your next generations, their spirit, to flourish in a more sustaining, uh, sustaining in balance system and world, where everybody has rights and everybody's treated equally. Um, that is important. At least to me, it is. So anyway, once again, some of the frames, and let me give you an example. I don't even know what to choose from here, because it's so crazy that I have so many freaking frames. Let me start with this one. This is the injection molded Robin 280 that I started selling, and you can see aluminum boom. Yeah, this is in old one of the frames here. Injection molded parts. I had learned how to do injection molding, and I was cutting my own molds on a Shearline mill that I acquired from this very smart gentleman in California. I had interesting story with that gentleman also, how I came about finding him, and after 10 years of having having talked with him in previous years, and 10 years later, I found out that he's the guy that I ended up buying this CNC machine, Shearline, all fitted with CNC equipment, so that I can do these molds back in 1999 when I released the Robin 280. So these are the molds that I created with just getting my feet wet, so to speak, in injection molded. So it's not perfect by any means, but it is. It was. I made it work, so that I can produce this product, because I was also under tension, under pressure of people. I had already shown that Robin 280 in some forums, and people were like, "I want one of those. I want one of those." I was showing this stuff, and people wanting, because there was nothing similar. That's the reason why people wanted these things. If I would have had competition, people would have been buying or had the option to buy something else. But there was a frenzy with my stuff that I was showing, and people were. So I was under pressure to develop these things, and this is how I came about these things. A lot of these things were done under heavy pressure for me to produce a helicopter. Plus, I had another company that was manufacturing something similar. You may recall the Piccolo helicopter. The Piccolo helicopter I showed in one of my last video. The box is still intact. I bought that just to see what it was like after I had already made my helicopter. I said I gotta buy the helicopter and see what how the similarities, differences. How the thought process was approached with that particular helicopter. But the way I also stumble on that name is also interesting, because I was already showing a lot of this early work, like I said, in via AOL, one of the channels there that first surfaced, and even before that, I think there was another medium of communication, internet, that surfaced, and I was showing a lot of stuff. And one time, one of the viewers had sent me a message, said, "Mario, did you know that there's another company that's manufacturing a similar helicopter to yours?" And I go, "What?" Sure enough, it turned out to be the company that was making the Piccolo. And so that's how I came to know these things. Otherwise, I was in my own realm, as you can probably tell. This to do this craziness of all these frames. Once again, this is only a small portion of the stuff that I'm digging out here from some of the bins that I've kept for over 30 years. It's a lot of work, a lot of things that have taken place. So what was I saying? So my first injection molded parts were part of the Robin 280 helicopter, which are these parts right here. And so I had to create all the molds. I had to really learn things fast, and I made a lot of mistakes in the process, because when you learn without having a tutor or having somebody teach you how to do these things, you have to do it by pure experimentation, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but you're also going to learn a lot. So that's how I learned injection molding, to the point that I was even making my own injection molding machines, customized it to or modified in some cases to do exactly what I needed to do. These gears, for example, that you see here, that gear right there is a second iteration of that gear, of that other gear right there. And if we put them side by side, another thing that I was trying to injection mold is my own gears, because at that time I was buying gears from Stock Drive products, and those were very expensive to get them in to do prototyping work. And even in mass production, they were very expensive gears, and they were heavy on top of that, much beefier gears, and I needed something very lightweight. So I had developed some molds, to do my own gears, but I wasn't satisfied with the way they were coming out, because the way I would cut the molds were with these little tiny end mills that I ended up breaking, many of them in the process of adjusting the feed and speed just right so that it wouldn't break, and making cuts, very shallow cuts in the aluminum to generate the teeth profile. So it was quite challenging. So that I decided, what, these gears are not good enough. Let me go back and see who's making gears for the industry. And so I found a company, I think it's Robinson Racing Products, that made these gears for me. I approached the gentleman that was running that company at that time. I think it's that company. Don't quote me on that. And I said, you know what, I would like to have these gears made for these little tiny helicopters that I'm developing, but I want them to be really, really thin. And I had quite an interesting discussion with that gentleman, because he was like, you're making it too thin, and it can't be done this way because of limitations of materials and limitations in the cutting process. So I had to work with him, and he was nice enough to work with me to the point that I got some really, really cool gears made. These are not the ones, but these are the ones that I did at that time. But you can see also the evolution of that gear. That one has a little more. The spokes are not all the way to the center hub. I could remove a lot more material there, and so that was the first gear. This was a second iteration, but the spokes were still too wide. And then my last gear that he made for me, some beautiful gears in Delrin, machine gear Delrin, had not only the perfect spokes, the perfect distribution of material, and also they had a slot on the bottom to retain a little pin for the shaft. So these are the things that the evolution of things as you make things. You got to start somewhere and modify that. And so by the same token, this compilation of frames is in similar fashion, along the same mental process that you see here. I even have this frame here. Let me pull this out here. From the Robin 280, from that frame that I mentioned, injection molded parts. That gear is also, that's also a CNC cut gear that was cut by this company also. You can see also that's a second iteration. The third iteration is they're all three nice three-spoke light gears that I show in some other videos. I consistently show those anytime I get a chance to speak about those gears, because they're really cool gears, and I still use those in my present-day helicopters, like the Bumblebee, the Mini Rebel, the modernized Robin 280 helicopter. That's the kind of stuff that I was making, in those days, with the limited knowledge and tools that I had at that time. At this time, I acquired an injection molding machine apparently from a company in the 50s that was making medical products. It was just a serious tabletop injection molding machine that I got from a company that sells used equipment. And the guy told me, you're going to need to work on this machine because it's not in working order. So I got it working, and I was making all these parts in that machine. I was making this big of a part, and some of the largest kits that I show in some other videos. This full frame, that machine will do that with no problem at all, as far as capacity of volume for the plastic. So I was making all these parts and all these little parts, additional parts. That rotor head in itself that I'm going to show here is very unique in the sense of how I acquired this, not only the support here, this pivoting support, but also how, let me see if I can focus because I'm holding my camera. How I acquired that pivoting using those type of bowlings. You will not see this type of head on any other helicopter except mine, with this S-shape anti-rotation arm part of that support there. So this provides two functions here. It provides an anti-rotation for the links that attach to the swash plate, but also allows the rotor head to pivot. And inside this part right here is the control for the fly bar. You know, what would be, in this particular case, old school rotor head, what would be this control here, this mechanism here. Do I have a helicopter with that setup? I don't, because these are just raw frames and pot and bones. And so it's just a closer look of the frame, the way I designed that. It's got the anti-rotation arm on the side here. This is actually supposed to be like that, so that it so that the servo link goes through that, and it provides anti-rotation arm for the link that attaches to the swash plate. You know, once again, very, very lightweight stuff. But before that, you know, I had to start with a mock-up, and that's what these other ones are about. You know, the mock-up using plastic square tubing. You know, you can see the idea plywood frame, actually very similar to the injection molded frame that I show here. But that was my mock-up there before I went to this here. You know, you have to do mock-ups before you get into real tooling. Mock-up anti-rotation arm for the swash plate. You can see this one is interesting because it's got two slots here for both the servo links to the servos that were just simply attached with double-sided tape on the side of the frame itself. And if you see some helicopters that came way after I provided the Robin 280, you can see a similar setup on those helicopters with just attaching the servo plates. I also often wonder how that came about. How did those companies do the same thing, exactly what I was doing, you know, years before they came out with something similar.